At 8 months pregnant and confined to bed rest, my entire world collapsed into the four walls of our small house outside Dallas, and I learned how dangerous silence could be. The doctor had said it gently, like bad news wrapped in cotton. No more work, no unnecessary movement, strict rest. As a nurse, I understood what she meant, but living it felt different. My body was heavy, my feet swollen, my ribs aching with every breath. I spent my days propped up by pillows, watching sunlight crawl across the bedroom ceiling while my baby rolled and stretched inside me like he was testing the edges of his future. Tyler acted concerned at first. He brought me water, adjusted my pillows, kissed my forehead before leaving for work, but something underneath him had shifted. His smiles didn't reach his eyes anymore. His phone never left his hand. And when his mother Margaret started coming over to help, the air in the house changed completely. Margaret didn't help. She hovered. She rearranged my kitchen without asking, critiqued the nursery colors, commented on what I ate. She had opinions about everything, especially my body. Too emotional, too sensitive, too tired. She said it all with a tight smile, like she was cataloging flaws. I told myself it was pregnancy hormones making me paranoid. I told myself to be grateful. Conflict had never been my strength. I learned long ago that staying quiet kept the peace, even when it cost me something. The night everything cracked open started like any other. I was half asleep, my hand resting on my stomach, counting the baby's movements the way Dr. Patel had taught me. Tyler was supposed to be in the living room on a late call with a supplier. Margaret's car was still in the driveway. I remember thinking I should ask her to leave soon. I needed rest. That's when I heard my name, not spoken to me, spoken about me. Their voices drifted down the hallway, low but careless. Tyler's tone was familiar, casual in a way he never used with me anymore. Margaret's voice was sharp and confident, like she was giving instructions. "She's getting worse," Margaret said. "Anyone can see that." Tyler laughed quietly. "She cried because the grocery store didn't have the cereal she wanted." "She's unstable," Margaret replied. "And judges don't give babies to unstable mothers." My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking the bed. "This is our child," Margaret continued. "Not hers, she just carried him." There was a pause. Then Tyler said the words that rewired something inside me forever. "A judge always sides with the stable parent." They talked about me like I wasn't a person, like I was a malfunctioning incubator. They joked about how easy it would be, how hormones made women unpredictable, how documentation mattered more than truth. I lay there frozen, my body heavy, my baby kicking like he sensed danger. I didn't cry. I didn't confront them. I reached slowly toward the nightstand and closed my fingers around the small silver pendant resting there. It looked like jewelry. Tyler had even complimented it once. It was a camera. I turned it on. The next morning, Tyler acted like nothing happened. Margaret brought me oatmeal and told me I looked tired in a way that felt rehearsed. They thought I was broken, drugged by hormones, too weak to notice. That was their first mistake. While they were out later that afternoon, I dragged myself out of bed despite the ache in my hips. I followed a feeling I couldn't explain, straight to the office Tyler used for paperwork. His filing cabinet was locked, but the key was hidden exactly where Margaret always hid her spare house keys, in a decorative jar, right in plain sight. Inside the cabinet were folders labeled with my name. Photos, printed emails, typed incident reports describing outbursts that never happened. A picture of a broken plate staged on the kitchen floor. Notes describing me as aggressive, erratic, unfit. My hands shook as I slid the folders back into place and locked the cabinet again. I made it back to bed just in time, my breath coming fast, my stomach tight with something far worse than contractions. Because now I knew. They weren't just talking. They were preparing. And as I lay there listening to the front door open, Margaret's heels clicking across my floor like she already owned it, I realized something chilling. They thought the baby would be taken from me after he was born. But they had started stealing him already. By the time I understood how deep their plan went, my body had already learned how to lie still while my mind stayed awake. From the outside, I looked defeated. Bed rest does that to you. People assume stillness means surrender. Margaret especially loved that version of me. She spoke louder around me, like I was fading. She corrected me in front of Tyler. She reminded everyone who visited how fragile I was, how worried she felt about the baby's safety. And all the while, the small pendant at my chest kept recording. Margaret forgot I was a nurse. Forgot I knew how people behave when they think they're in control. She coached Tyler openly now, told him what to say, what words to use, how to sound concerned instead of cruel. If they ask about her moods, don't exaggerate, she told him one afternoon, standing at the foot of my bed. Just sound tired, like you've been carrying the weight. Tyler nodded. I can do that. You always could, she replied. That night, when Tyler thought I was asleep, he whispered into his phone about paperwork, about timelines, about how once the baby was born, things would move fast. I didn't confront him. I saved the files, backed them up, labeled dates. Time stamps mattered, details mattered. What Tyler didn't know was that months earlier, before bed rest, before Margaret's visits became constant, I had felt the shift. The way resentment leaked into his voice when he talked about money. The way he flinched when people praised my job. The way he joked, not joking, about how everything was in my name. I had gone to see an attorney then. Quietly. Alone, Jason Cole didn't interrupt when I spoke. He listened with his hands folded, his eyes steady, like he already knew where this was going. Pregnancy makes women vulnerable, he said carefully, but it also gives bad people ideas. He explained options, protective clauses, safeguards. I signed documents that afternoon I hoped I'd never need. Tyler signed them later, buried inside refinance papers Margaret herself insisted we push through. She skimmed. Tyler trusted her. No one questioned the fine print. Back in the present, my body started betraying me before my plan was finished. The argument began over nothing. A glass left on the counter, Margaret calling me careless, Tyler snapping that I was stressing myself out. I tried to walk away, slowly, carefully. Tyler stepped back at the same time, his foot caught mine. I went down hard. Pain exploded through my abdomen, sharp and terrifying. I screamed. Margaret screamed louder. At the hospital, everything blurred into white lights and clipped voices. Contractions, monitoring. Tyler holding my hand like a man who loved me. Margaret pacing, telling nurses how emotional I'd been lately. She works herself into these states, Margaret said loudly. I've been saying it for months. Dr. Patel arrived just as Margaret started explaining my supposed history. Dr. Patel didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She asked Margaret to step outside. Then she looked at me, really looked. Are you safe at home? She asked quietly. I swallowed, nodded once. Then, barely perceptible, shook my head. Her jaw tightened. She made notes, asked questions, documented everything. When Margaret came back in, Dr. Patel's tone had changed. Professional, distant, protective. I was sent home that night, shaken but still pregnant. 2 days later, while signing hospital pre-registration forms, I saw it. Primary residence for infant. Margaret's address. My hands went cold. Tyler stood beside me, smiling nervously. It's just temporary, he said. In case you need help. I signed nothing. I said nothing. That night after Tyler fell asleep, my phone buzzed. A knock came at the door minutes later. A court officer stood there with an envelope. Emergency custody hearing. Scheduled for the morning after my induction. They weren't waiting for the baby to be born. They were planning to take him before I could even hold him. The night before the hearing, sleep never came, but clarity did. I lay in the dark with one hand on my stomach, feeling my son roll and press like he was reminding me he was still here, still mine. Tyler slept beside me, breathing evenly, the picture of a worried husband to anyone who didn't know better. His phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. Margaret. I replayed everything in my head, not emotionally, but methodically. Dates, words, tone. The way Margaret always said the baby instead of his name. The way Tyler's concern only appeared when someone else was watching. At dawn, they drove me to the courthouse instead of the hospital. Margaret wore pearls and a soft sweater, the kind of outfit meant to signal stability. Tyler looked exhausted in a way that read sympathetic, not guilty. They flanked me as we walked in, guiding me like I might fall apart at any second. I let them. I spoke softly. I moved slowly. I held my stomach and kept my eyes down. Every camera, every clerk, every person in that hallway saw exactly what they expected to see. A fragile pregnant woman. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Intimate. Too quiet. Margaret sat close to Tyler, one hand on his arm like she was grounding him. I sat alone until Jason Cole arrived and took the seat beside me without ceremony. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. I nodded. The hearing started the way Margaret had planned. Tyler's attorney spoke about concern, about erratic behavior, about safety. Margaret dabbed her eyes at rehearsed moments. Tyler talked about loving his child and fearing for him. When it was my turn, I stood slowly, one hand braced on the table. I felt every eye on me. I said very little. I said I was tired. I said pregnancy had been hard. I said I trusted the court. Margaret smiled like she'd already won. Jason didn't respond immediately. He waited. Let the silence stretch. Then he stood. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "before we proceed further, we request permission to submit audiovisual evidence." Margaret stiffened. Tyler glanced at her. Jason held up a small silver pendant. "This device belongs to my client." Margaret laughed softly. "That's absurd." Jason pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the room. "She's unstable. Judges don't give babies to unstable mothers." The sound was unmistakable. Clear, casual, cruel. Tyler's face drained of color as his own voice followed. "A judge always sides with the stable parent." The courtroom didn't move. No one spoke. Margaret's smile collapsed in real time. Jason didn't stop there. He played another clip, Margaret coaching Tyler, telling him how to lie, how to sound concerned, how to document incidents. Margaret stood halfway up. "This is illegal." "It's not," Jason replied evenly. "Texas is a one-party consent state." The judge held up a hand. Margaret sat down, shaking. Jason submitted hospital records next. Dr. Patel's notes. Documentation of Emma Ray's being mentally sound, compliant, calm. Notes about outside interference. About a mother-in-law attempting to influence medical decisions. Dr. Patel stood and testified briefly, professionally, precisely. Then Jason placed one final document on the bench, a postnuptial agreement. Tyler leaned forward, squinting, his lips parted. "This agreement," Jason said, "was signed by Mr. Ray's 18 months ago. It grants my client sole ownership of the marital home and full parental decision rights if her mental stability is ever legally challenged by him." Margaret whispered something frantic. Tyler shook his head. "That's not what that was." Jason met his eyes. "It is exactly what it was." The judge leaned back, steepling her fingers, her expression unreadable. And for the first time since this began, Margaret looked at me not with contempt, but with fear. The judge didn't rule immediately. She didn't need to. She looked from the documents to the frozen faces in front of her, then back to me, still seated, still holding my stomach like it was the only solid thing in the room. "This court does not take lightly attempts to manipulate custody through fraud," she said at last. Her voice was steady, controlled, but sharp enough to cut. "Especially not against a medically documented, mentally sound mother." Margaret tried to speak. The judge raised a hand. "I'm not finished." She turned to Tyler. "You signed legal documents you claim not to understand. You participated in recorded conversations plotting to remove a newborn from his mother under false pretenses. That is not concern. That is intent." Tyler opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The ruling followed quickly after that. Full legal and physical custody awarded to me. Tyler granted supervised visitation only, contingent on further evaluation. Margaret barred from unsupervised contact entirely. An investigation ordered into falsified evidence, fraudulent filings, and perjury. Then the house. The judge reviewed the postnuptial agreement once more and nodded. "Mrs. Ray's retains sole ownership of the marital property," she said. "Mr. Ray's is to vacate within 30 days. Margaret made a sound like air escaping a balloon. Court adjourned. Tyler didn't look at me as he stood. Margaret did. Her face had collapsed into something small and frantic, stripped of certainty. For a moment, I saw exactly what she was. Powerless. My induction happened 2 days later. Dr. Patel stayed late. She held my hand through the worst of it, her calm voice grounding me when the pain felt endless. When my son was placed on my chest, warm and crying and real, the world finally went quiet. Nothing else mattered. Weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and soft mornings. The house felt different without Tyler's tension soaked into the walls. I moved slowly through the nursery, rocking my son, learning the rhythm of his breathing, the way his fingers curled around mine like he was anchoring himself to life. One afternoon, while he slept against my shoulder, my phone buzzed. An email from the court. Child support ordered. Legal fees assigned. Supervised visitation schedule outlined in careful language that left no room for interpretation. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Later, I learned where they ended up. A small apartment across town. Too cramped for Margaret's furniture. Too quiet for her voice. Tyler had lost contracts. His name was tangled in investigations. They argued constantly, according to the one relative who still spoke to them. They had tried to build a cage for me. Instead, they'd locked themselves inside it. That night, I sat in the nursery with the lights dimmed, my son warm in my arms. The house was quiet in a way that felt earned. I watched his chest rise and fall, steady and sure, and I thought about how close I'd come to losing him before he ever took his first breath. They had underestimated me because I was pregnant, because I was tired, because I didn't scream. They mistook silence for weakness. I kissed my son's forehead and held him a little closer. The world could try to take everything from me again. Now it knew better.